Ladies and gentlemen, the following podcast is set for one episode. Your host from Columbus, Ohio, is Michael Kerr. Welcome to the Outlaw Mudcast. Hello and welcome to the Outlaw Mudcast, your digital audio dirt sheet for all things Super Show. The big story this week is Marktoberfest 2. Marktoberfest 2, huge event, November 14th. A lot of things happened. Let me go through some of the preambles first. Of course, the central event of Marktoberfest 2 was a Create a Competitor tournament. There were also a number of championship matches that took place that day. We'll get into that in just a minute. In the lead up to Marktoberfest, we had a couple things happen. First, we knew that the current LFF Tag Team Champions, the higher class team of the General Manager John Calais and Kid Thunder were going to be on hand. There was going to be a match between them and some sort of tag team. Who that tag team was going to be determined by the interim General Manager for the tag team division. Two men were up for that position. Loudmouth Leo Larynx and the Italian Bombata, Chris Pagillo. Monday night, they had a match. Loudmouth Leo using his own competitor, Loudmouth Leo Larynx, and Chris Pagillo using the Italian Bombata. They faced off. Crowd meter 1, Italian Bombata comes away with the victory. Chris Pagillo is the general manager for the tag team event. He chooses the tag team that will challenge for the championship, McPeak Incorporated. McPeak Incorporated, the team of Jeff McPeak and Mac McPeak, will take on the higher class team Saturday. We've also, for a long time, been waiting for the Director of Operations, Dave Marisak, to decide who will face the Underworld champion. He finally announced a match for the Underworld championship contender. James Booker, using Theo the Greek Neo, faced off against Matt Nealon using the Mayor of Slamtown, Johnny Super Show. This match, I believe, took place Thursday night. The winner was Matt Nealon. Matt Nealon would go on to face the Underworld champion Saturday, November 14th at Marktoberfest for that championship. So let's run down the day's events of Marktoberfest 2. It kicked off 11 a.m. with a match between Dave Marisak using the man from IT and Steel Wool using Steel Wool. This is a rivalry that's been building since the original Marktoberfest, and it culminates with a victory for the Director of Operations. The Director of Operations is able to defeat Steel Wool. We also had, before the main tournament kicked off, a couple other matches. We had the tag team match, higher class. The general manager using Snake Pit, Kid Thunder using Chibi defended against McPeak Incorporated. Jeff McPeak using the Mark Jeff Bravo, and Mac McPeak using her own competitor, Mac Attack. And in perhaps an upset, McPeak Incorporated wins. They are the new LFF Tag Team Champions. Later on, before the tournament, we had the Bluegrass Championship. The general manager, John Calais, presented the Bluegrass Championship belt to Bobby Ohio prior to his defense. Bobby Ohio, using Lunatic Ginge, had to defend against Pretty Boy Snow using his own competitor, Pretty Boy Snow, and Pretty Boy Snow wins. For the second time at Marktoberfest, the champion does not defend. We have a new champion. The tournament then kicks off. 36 players, cut to a top 16. At the top 16, everyone is in a Liger's Den match. Top 8, Steel Chain. Top 4, Steel Cage. And the finals match is a ladder match, aka Create a Competitor on a pole match. The finalists were Tyler Chaos, using his own competitor Tyler Chaos, and Ryan Nealon, using the Rising Sun. Neither player, I believe, was using ladder cards in their deck, so there were always additional breakout rolls with the bonus to the breakout roll because there were no ladders in play. In the end, representing CCW, representing the firing squad, Tyler Chaos wins the Creator Competitor Tournament at Marktoberfest 2. Congratulations to him. Afterwards, there are a number of other championship matches. The Underworld Championship match. The Underworld Champion, using Shane Hurricane Helms, must defend against Matt Nealon, who won Thursday night using the Mayor of Slamtown, Johnny's Super Show, and once again, the challenger wins. Matt Nealon is the new Underworld Champion. Next up, a trios match. Steel Wool finds himself in the second match of the day. Steel Wool, using Shovel Club, takes on the current LFF Trios champion, Mallory, using the My Girls Trio. Mallory is able to successfully defend in that match. Mallory remains the Trios champion. Next up, we have the All-Ohio Tag Team Championships. The current champions, Bobby Ohio, using Scarlet Graves, and Jamal Lewis, using the Rogue Anthony Gangone, 2 Live Lou, take on the tag team of Ann and Colin Moss. Ann Moss using Numero Uno, Colin Moss using DJ Outlaw. And the Mosses win. We have new All-Ohio Tag Team Champions. The closing match at Marktoberfest 2, the Tornado Tag Team Championship is defended. Chris Pate, the champion with Dangerous Alliance, is challenged by Charity Vanderweel, Katie Kitty, using the brand new Tornado Tag Team featuring Katie Kitty and Cheetah, 2 Cats, 2 Purius. And Charity Vanderweel wins. She is the new LFF Tornado Tag Champion. So, today is a day of new champions. With the exception of the Trios Championship, every LFF Championship that was on the line changes hands. We have an almost entirely new slate of LFF champions. I would say that's incredibly unlikely. Congratulations to all the new champions. That was Marktoberfest 2. It closed with the Director of Operations announcing a number of new signings to Rust Belt Wrestling, including Keith Overby, Christy Overby, the SRG Mom and the Frequent Flyer, the LFF Trios Champion, Mallory the Destroyer, Brian Vanderweel, Charity Vanderweel, the LFF Tornado Tag Champion, and in a shocking betrayal, Booker blindsides Matt Nealon, announces that he has joined Impact. And in response, Chris Pagillo, who's on site, signs with Rust Belt Wrestling. So, out of nowhere, we have James Booker, Ghost Impact, and the Italian Mambata Chris Pagillo joins the Rust Belt. Shocking turn of events to close out Marktoberfest 2, but that was the events of Marktoberfest 2. Other news from this week. We had the finals of the Rising Star Tournament. Kid Thunder, using Scarlet Graves, was facing Michael Sanderson using Unique. It was a ladder match, and at Crowd Meter 1, Kid Thunder wins. Kid Thunder becomes the winner of the Rising Star Tournament. We had Wednesday night a defense of the LFF United States Championship. The current LFF U.S. Champion, Harvey Luster, using Sage the Wiccan Witch, is challenged by Jacob Maynard using Scott Prime in a match that was streamed with a lot of technical difficulties, but Crowd Meter 2, Harvey Luster successfully defends. He is still the LFF U.S. Champion. They announced a new challenger for the Tag Team Championships. Sage the Wicked Witch and Jay Flash will be teaming up to take on the brand new LFF Tag Team Champions, McPeak Incorporated. Matt Barone is going to be the next challenger for the LFF Tri-State Championship. There was a defense of the LFF Junior Heavyweight Championship. Lil G, young Gary Schneider, with the Rising Sun, was challenged by Ryan Nealon, the Marktoberfest 2 finalist, using the Flip Immortal Warrior. Lil G is able to defend. He is still the champion. At the time Mac McPeak was announced for the next contender, I do not know if becoming tag team champion will affect that shot. A lot of times they do not like to double book champions. If you are a champion for one belt, they don't like to have you go up for a second belt. So I do not know if her being one half of the LFF Tag Team Champions will affect her status as contender for the Junior Heavyweight Championship. That remains to be seen. Outside of that, other news, the LFF Tag Tournament to determine a future potential competitor for that Tag Team Championship has advanced again. The winner's bracket is in the top 8. There are 8 teams in the loser's bracket to compete and see if they can make it back to the finals. But that tournament has advanced. People who have signed up for the Cookies Fortune Tournament, the competitor that all the 64 participants, I believe, will be using has been announced. They have until Monday, November 16th, is the deadline to submit your deck list. If you are in the tournament, you know who your competitor is. You have to send in, I believe, your entrance card, your spectacle type, and your cards numbers 1 through 30 to the general manager, John Calais at srguniverse.com. And that is the big news. I should also mention that the Cosmic Crusaders, which we weren't sure when that was going to release, I figured it'd be toward the end of the month. They actually came out this weekend. November 14th is when all of the Cosmic Crusaders were released. They were available on site at Marktoberfest 2 for purchase. All of the box sets, the sets that were pre-ordered, have been mailed out. I will go through those sets on a future date. It's just going to be one of many specials I've lined up. I still have to get through the Created deck, the Claim the Throne set. I'm quite behind on those. I apologize for that. But I will be talking about the Cosmic Crusaders very soon. Let's go ahead and talk about the tournaments that happened this week outside of Marktoberfest. Thursday night, we had a Boss Roddy beatdown. Winner receives a playmat. Other things potentially. Had your group stages. Went to a top cut. The finalists in the top cut were Andrew Meckie using D2 and Candyman Dan using Robert the Brain Dunn. This was a version of Robert the Brain Dunn that a lot of people didn't know existed. It was a version 10 power, I believe, but where the agility is a 7 and the technique is a 5. I think on the previous version, those numbers were switched. They were facing off in a brand new match type, the Raven's Blood Cemetery match. It was a buried alive type match where if you had no cards in your hand and you had no cards in the discard pile, in other words, all 30 cards were in the deck, you lost. When one player hit a finish on another player, the player that was breaking out received infinite breakout rolls. They would either break out normally, or if they rolled their highest skill, they broke out. For each breakout roll, they had to bury a certain number of cards. At the beginning, it was 1. As time went on, that grew to 2, 3, 4, and 5 cards that had to be buried per breakout roll. The person who hit the finish got to choose which one of 3 locations to bury from: hand, discard pile, or cards in play. Because if you did not remove the cards in play, if you did not bury the cards in play, when the breakout finished, all the cards in play would go to the discard pile, and the special win condition wouldn't be met. But that was the Raven's Blood Cemetery match. The winner, Candyman Dan Hughes. Candyman Dan wins the Thursday night tournament. Friday night, Loudmouth Leo Larynx hosts a Freaky Friday tournament. This was a tournament where everyone brought 4 competitors. Loudmouth selected which of the 4 competitors they would play around. The other 3 would be at ringside. And wherever there was a finish, competitors would switch out. 5 bullet rounds. Top 4 were in a Freaky Friday Fatal 4-Way. It was an elimination match. There were no separate play piles. Did not bare your hand for stopping a move played against another player. And when the crowd meter went up, each player randomly swapped the gimmicks. When a finish was stopped, you swapped that finish with a random finish of the same type from the ringside. So, let's say your 4 competitors you were using were Snake Pit, El Super Hombre, Merlin Von Berlin, and D2. If you played the Snake Bite, which I believe is the finish strike for Snake Pit, and that was stopped, the Snake Bite would be randomly swapped out for, say, maybe the Face Melter from your D2. The top 4 ended up being, and I'll announce this in order of place. The 4th place player, Anthony Perry, the Cannoli, who was using as his 4 Haley Stevens, the Cannoli, the Collector Sean Loeb, and Mastered Osmodius. In 3rd place, Matt Haas, who was using the Invisible Man, Donation, Shane Hurricane Helms, and Lorenzo Manicati. 2nd place, Alec Ventresca, using Johnny Gargano, Kenny Omega, David Starr, and AJ Styles. And the winner, Steve Korniak, the other Steve, using Loudmouth Leo Larynx, Elio the Law, LED, and Ruby Renegade. Congratulations to all of them. That seems like that would have been a very interesting match type. I'd be curious to play a match like that in the future. This just was a bad weekend for me because I did have to leave early. I was there on site for Marktoberfest. There was another event, same day as Marktoberfest. It was the pre-Thanksgiving Hoedown Throwdown, hosted by the Dread Pirate tech support Simon Strauss. Unfortunately, and understandably, with Marktoberfest being such a big event, there was a low turnout. Only 2 players played, Jeremy Steigerwald and Ken Fushi, and Jeremy Steigerwald walked away with the victory. Congratulations to him. That was the other Saturday tournament. Sunday, there is a tournament for the U.S. Championship contender spot, run by Dustin Garman and streamed by Jeffrey Fox. 15 players in the tournament. But this is the True American Guys Make a Child's Christmas Tournament, where the proceeds are going to help out children in the town where Dustin Garman is from. 4 rounds, cut to a top 9. There were a couple undefeated. There were a lot of 2 and 2s. All the 2 and 2s had to play off, which meant there ended up being a top 9. In the end, it came down to Mark F. and Perry using Jacques A. and King Cold using Gold Standard. And King Cold wins the tournament. King Cold with Gold Standard will be a contender for the United States Championship. Congratulations to him. And that is the tournament news for this week. One thing I forgot to mention earlier, I'll mention now. Candyman Dan Hughes, for winning Thursday night, I believe that gave him a shot at the Triad Championship. He and James Sweeney will be taking on Chibi at some point in the future. Chibi being the current Triad Champion. That is it for the tournaments for this past week. Coming up for next week, as of right now, there's only one thing posted on supershowthegame.com. It is the FreeCon Memoriam Create a Competitor Tournament. This is the RCW Revolutionary Championship Wrestling tournament, where if you win, you will be able to create a competitor in the game. $15 entrance fee, taking place Saturday, November 21st, starting at noon. 2020 visions in effect. It is a play it pure tournament, meaning that you cannot use entrance cards, spectacle cards, or skill cards. And I believe you cannot use generic finishes as well. But that is next Saturday. As I record this, it is the 15th. Saturday the 21st is FreeCon. Outside of that, nothing else is posted. I would say look for something Thursday night. I would say expect the dojo, like always, to be Tuesday night. But otherwise, after having a big weekend with Marktoberfest this weekend, at least at the time I'm recording this, is pretty wide open. Now, last week I told you that I was going to talk about Foxworthy and the Philly cheese cannolis. Unfortunately, because of the Sunday tournament, I'm not going to have the time to go through those and cover those in depth the way I want to. Instead, I'm going to cover two competitors from the firing squad. The winner of the Marktoberfest 2 Create a Competitor Tournament, Tyler Chaos, and his friend, the Beast, Michael Kerr. Let's start with Tyler Chaos. Here are the skills, and here's the gimmick. Power 8, Technique 9, Agility 6, Strike 10, Submission 7, Grapple 5. When your opponent buries any number of cards in their hand, your next turn roll is +1. Looking at the skills and how they relate to cards you can play in the slots from 13 to 15, with a strike of 10, a card like Running Lariat makes sense. With a technique of 9, a card like Single Leg Crab makes sense. And with a power of 8, a card like Falling Power Slam makes sense. You could, with a strike of 10, run the 7 seals. It does the same thing as Falling Power Slam, but it also allows you to put a card for discard on top of your deck. I don't know that I would do that, but it's a possibility. So, 13, I'd recommend running Lariat. This allows you to stop a grapple if your strike skill is greater than your opponent's strike skill. 14, Falling Power Slam. If your power is greater than your opponent's power, stop any grapple. And at 15, Single Leg Crab. If your technique is greater than your opponent's technique, stop any strike. Gimmick. Very simple. When your opponent buries any number of cards in their hand, your next turn roll is +1. Now that is if you cause your opponent to bury cards in their hand, playing a card like, say, Head Crush, where your opponent buries one card in their hand or your next turn roll is +1. You kind of get the best of both worlds there. You play that, they bury a card, and from your gimmick you get the +1. And if your opponent has to bury a card from their hand for something, I'll give you an example, something like Jump Kick. I believe Jump Kick is a strike at number 7 spotlight card that says you draw one card, then bury one card in your hand. If this card's in your discard pile and you roll agility, you may add it to your hand. If they play a card like Jump Kick, they draw one, they have to bury one, then that's going to trigger your gimmick. You get the +1. I like this gimmick. It's simple, and it's pretty easy to build around. Let's look at the finishes for Tyler Chaos. The finish strike, number 28, Ready for Burial. +2 to technique, +1 to strike. Your opponent buries 2 cards in their hand. Add 1 card from your discard pile to your hand. If stopped, you lose the match via disqualification. +2 to technique will make that an 11. +1 to strike will make that an 11. So you're going to have 5, 6, 7, 8, and 2 11s. Your opponent's going to bury 2 cards in their hand, so you're going to get +1 to your next turn roll, assuming you don't win hitting Ready for Burial. Add 1 card from discard pile to your hand. That's a nice bit of recursion. It does have the disqualification text. If it's stopped, you will lose via disqualification. But if you're playing in a match with stipulations, this does give you at crowd meter 0, in almost every case, a 1 in 3 chance to roll an 11 and win outright. Because again, in stipulation matches, the crowd meter 0 rule is not in effect. Your opponent cannot roll their highest skill at crowd meter 0 and break out. That is the finished strike. Let's look at the finished grapple next. Buried in Chaos. +2 to submission, +2 to grapple. Your opponent buries one card in their hand. It's going to bump your 5 to a 7, and your 7 to a 9. So 6, 7, 8, 9, 9, 10. 50% chance to roll 9 or better is good. And because your opponent will bury one card in their hand, it will trigger your gimmick. If you do not win here, your next turn roll is +1. And finally, the finished submission, Blinded by Chaos. +1 to power, +1 to submission, +2 to grapple. Increases your power to a 9, your submission to an 8, and your grapple to a 7. So 6, 7, 8, 9, 9, 10. Again, 50% chance to roll a 9 is good. No other text, just a solid finish. So I would say I like Tyler Chaos. Tyler Chaos to me is a very simple competitor. A competitor that I would say is actually very new player friendly. I think it's very easy to understand. But that is Tyler Chaos, the winner of the Marktoberfest 2 Create a Competitor Tournament. And now let's take a look at his friend and fellow firing squad member, the Beast Michael Kerr. Michael Kerr is a flip competitor, where the first side is horizontal art and the second side is vertical art. Let me give you the skills and the gimmick here. Power 10, Technique 5, Agility 7, Strike 9, Submission 6, Grapple 8. Your Power Bomb is also a finish. After you flip 2 or more cards, turn this card over. Let's look at the stops in the 13 through 15 with a power of 10, falling power slam, and actually 7 seals does make sense here. So I'd think about running 7 seals at 14. Strike of 9, running Lariat makes sense. With a technique of 5 and a submission of 6, I don't think I would run either single leg crab or bow and arrow. So I would say 13 running Lariat, 14 7 seals, and 15 just pick whatever you think is going to be good. Gimmick-wise, your Power Bomb is also a finish, is a nice bonus. Let's talk about Power Bomb for a second. Power Bomb is a follow-up grapple at number 23. It is a skill requirement card. You have to have an 8 or greater in power to be able to run it and not have the text be blank. You can run it if your power is less than 8, but the text is blank. It says, flip 4 cards, add 2 cards from your discard pile to your hand. To me, clearly you're going to want to run that in this deck. Gives you the ability to have 4 finishes. The second part of the gimmick is after you flip 2 or more cards, turn this card over. So if you use that Power Bomb as a finish, you will have to turn it over. If you play any cards that flip 2 or more cards, you will have to turn it over. The other side has all the same skills. The gimmick, once this is flipped, is when your opponent's power is 10 or greater, your power is +1. So if you happen to be playing a competitor that had a power of 10, so something like the 7 seals would not normally work. Once you get the flip on this, you now have an 11 power. It will work, assuming they then in turn don't boost their own power. It does also give you the ability to roll an 11 at crowd meter 0 if you flip this before the first finish is hit and you roll 10. So, nice competitor card. Again, I think it's a relatively simple gimmick. Getting +1 to your power after the flip. And again, that only works if your opponent's power is 10 or greater. If your power is the highest power, if nobody has a power equal to yours, then you essentially don't have a gimmick once it's flipped. But this does ensure, in almost every case, power supremacy. You will have the highest power between you and your opponent when you are playing. Let's look at the finishes. We'll start with the finish strike, number 28. Look alive, sunshine. +2 to agility, +1 to strike, If the crowd meter is 3 or greater, this card is also a follow-up. +2 to agility will increase that skill to a 9. +1 to strike increases that to a 10. So 5, 6, 8, 9, and 2 10s. Not bad. 50% chance to roll 9 or better. 1 in 3 to roll 10. And it's a follow-up once you hit crowd meter 3. So it gives you, like with the power bomb, an ability to have a lead, follow-up finish, basically trigger a finish roll with only 2 cards in play. This has the same effect. Once you hit crowd meter 3 and you have a lead in play, you can play this and trigger a finish roll if it hits. Next, we'll look at the finish grapple number 29, Beast Bomb. +3 to technique, +1 to grapple. If your opponent's power is less than 10, double these bonuses. Without the doubling, +3 to technique increases that to an 8. +1 to grapple increases that to a 9. If your opponent does not have a power of 10, which I would argue is more than likely if their power is less than 10, and you can even think about packing cards to reduce your opponent's skill, so maybe you'd knock the power, if they also happen to have a 10, down to a 9. If their power is less than 10, you double the bonuses. So when they're doubled, your grapple becomes a 10. Your technique becomes an 11. That would give you a 6, a 7, a 9, 2 10s, and an 11. 50% chance to roll 10 or better is really good. And even has that 11, which, like I said, in a stipulation match, crowd meter 0, this gives you the ability to roll an 11 and you could win outright in almost every case. Very good finish here. Let's look at the finish submission. Number 30, Steel City Lock. +4 to technique, +2 to submission. If you have 4 cards with steel in the name in play, your opponent gets 2 breakout rolls this turn. +4 to technique increases that to a 9. +2 to submission increases that to an 8. So you'll have a 7, 2 8s, 2 9s, and a 10. Again, this is really good. 5 and 6 chance to roll 8 or better. 50% chance to roll 9 or better. That's really good. And if you have 4 cards with steel in the name and play, your opponent gets 2 breakout rolls this turn. That's nice when playing somebody like El Super Hombre. El Super Hombre gets that bonus to his 3rd breakout roll. This bypasses that. And it does not say 4 other cards. So this card counts itself. So if you play Steel City Lock and have 3 other cards with steel in the name in play, your opponent's only going to get 2 breakout rolls. So with the steel chain cards in all the submission spots, with the steel chair cards in the grapple spots, you have a lot of options to build to have enough cards with steel in the deck to make this worthwhile, to trigger this second part of the gimmick and make sure your opponent only gets 2 breakout rolls and not 3. That is the Beast Michael Kerr, and that was Tyler Chaos. And that should do it for this week's show. One last reminder, tomorrow, as I record this, tomorrow, November 16th, is the deadline to submit your deck list for the Cookies Fortune Tournament to John Calais at srguniverse.com. So, if you have not done that, please do so as soon as possible. You do not want to miss that deadline. And also, the Create a Competitor competition, the 2020 CCC, is underway. We do not have any information on when the rounds will start, but the competition is underway. So if you're in it, post promos, get yourself out there, make yourself known so people will vote for you. And that's it. That's all I have to say this week. I'd like to thank all of you for listening, and good day.